7 years into my marriage, I believed I was the luckiest woman on earth, a modern-day princess whose fairy tale had come true. My husband, Ethan Blackwood, was a celebrated architect, well known in New York circles. He wasn't just handsome and talented, he doted on me in a way that made all my friends envious. Every morning he was up before me preparing a glass of warm lemon water and a light breakfast neatly placed on the counter. He said my stomach was sensitive and I couldn't skip a meal. Every evening, no matter how late he returned from work, his first act was to walk into the room, embrace me from behind, inhale the scent of my hair, and whisper, "My love, I'm home." These gestures, these sweet words were a secure web of love that made me trust him completely, immerse myself totally, and willingly sacrifice everything. For Ethan, I walked away from the future position of CFO at the Hayes Group, my family's multinational conglomerate, a path paved with roses that my father, Chairman Robert Hayes, had meticulously planned. I defied my father, rejected a high-profile arranged marriage, and followed the call of love. I wanted to prove that my choice was right. I wanted to build a simple, loving home, free from the pressure of money or status, and I did it. I became a full-time, devoted homemaker. Our billionaire's row penthouse, once a cold, empty space, was transformed by my careful attention into a real home. Every corner reflected my meticulous touch. From the fresh-cut leaves replaced daily to the elaborate dinners always featuring Ethan's favorites, I memorized his smallest preferences. From his morning sugar-free espresso to the soft lumbar support pillow he needed for his lower back while reading blueprints, my life revolved around him. My joy was seeing his satisfied smile when he returned home after a long day. He often held me and said, "Having you at home, Mia, is the greatest fortune of my life." I believed those words naively. Absolutely. Our peaceful life continued until about 6 months ago when Chloe Vance and her young son moved into the apartment 1 floor below. I first saw her struggling with heavy boxes by the elevator. She had a delicate but pale, exhausted face with a fragile 3-year-old boy, Leo, clinging shyly to her side. I didn't hesitate to offer help. She told me she was a single mother, recently divorced, trying to start a new life in the city. Her pitiful situation resonated with my compassion. From then on, I frequently visited them, bringing young Leo treats or sharing some of my homemade dinners. I viewed her as a younger sister, a trustworthy friend. Chloe was overly grateful, constantly thanking me and calling me her savior. Occasionally, she would bake a small tart or make a pot of artisanal jam and bring it upstairs, saying, "Just a small token of thanks to you both, Mr. and Mrs. Blackwood." Ethan initially paid little attention, but during the times Chloe dropped by when he was home, she would express overwhelming admiration for him. "Oh, Mr. Blackwood, you're an architect, aren't you? The design of your apartment alone shows such class, or with such a brilliant man, Mrs. Blackwood, you truly are blessed." Which man doesn't love hearing such glowing praise? Ethan began to show more interest in our seemingly unfortunate neighbor. He occasionally fixed a leaky faucet for her or helped her install a new bookshelf. Everything unfolded naturally before my eyes, and I harbored no suspicion. I even felt pleased that my husband was such a kind, chivalrous man. I was too foolish, too blind to realize that my kindness had inadvertently opened the door for the wolf. Subtle changes began to appear. Ethan started coming home later. The excuse was always the same. A new project was in a critical phase. He had to stay late for investor meetings. His phone calls became more frequent, and he often stepped out onto the balcony to talk, claiming he didn't want to disturb my rest. Once I accidentally saw a text message pop up on his screen from a contact saved as rainy day intern. "Are you home yet? Leo and I miss you so much." When I asked, he brushed it off, saying it was just a young intern at the firm who looked up to him like an older brother. He even laughed, accusing me of being senselessly jealous. I believed him. I blamed myself for being overly sensitive and told myself I must trust my husband completely. I even felt guilty for doubting him. The sophistication of his act was masterful. I, his wife of 7 years, was made a fool in my own story. Then came the fateful day. It was our 7th wedding anniversary. I had prepared a romantic candle-lit dinner with vintage wine and all of Ethan's favorite dishes. I wore the red silk gown he had given me for my birthday, waiting for him eagerly. 6 o'clock, 7, 8. He still hadn't returned. I called. He didn't answer. Near 9, he sent a hasty text. "My love, I'm so sorry. Emergency issue with a key partner. I had to rush over. I'll be home as soon as I can. Please don't wait up for dinner." Disappointment and emptiness washed over me, but I forced a smile and texted back. "It's okay, darling. Focus on work. I'll wait for you here." I cleared the table, putting the cold dishes away. My heart felt hollow. That night, a sudden summer squall hit. The thunder clapped loudly, jolting me awake. I suddenly remembered the Italian silk duvet cover Ethan had bought. It was drying on our building's rooftop. This was the private terrace reserved for our penthouse, a space I had transformed into a small garden where we sometimes went to stargaze. Fearful the expensive silk would be ruined, I quickly threw on a light robe, grabbed an umbrella, and headed toward the staircase. The stairs leading up were dim, lit only by a faint yellow glow escaping from the door frame. As I approached, something felt wrong. The rooftop door, which I meticulously locked every day, was slightly ajar. Then, above the pounding rain, I heard another sound. A sound that froze me completely, stopping the blood in my veins. It wasn't the wind or the rain. It was a woman's soft giggle intertwined with a man's low, affectionate voice. A voice I could never mistake. The voice of Ethan Blackwood, my husband. My story had just begun. The humiliation, the bitterness, and the most spectacular revenge were yet to come. My ears buzzed. The sound of the torrential rain and the distant thunder seemed swallowed by the deadly silence in my soul. I stood motionless on the final step, umbrella still clutched in my hand, feeling the cold rain spray in through the crack, chilling my skin, but not as cold as my heart. Ethan's voice, the voice that whispered loving words in my ear every night, was now using that same tenderness to caress another woman. Easy now. A little rain frightens you. I'm here. Chloe Vance's sharp, grating giggle sliced through the air like a drill bit into my eardrum. But I just want you to hold me, darling. It's so romantic up here, isn't it? Like the whole world is just us. The whole world is just us. That phrase hit my chest like a sledgehammer, stealing my breath. And what about me? What was I in his world? A wife, a decorator for his perfect house? Or just a pathetic fool who was deceived? I don't know where I found the courage to move forward. My legs felt heavy, each step a struggle. I silently pressed myself against the wall next to the door and peered through the narrow gap. And then the most horrific sight of my life materialized. Under the faint yellow light cast by the garden lamp, Ethan and Chloe were tangled together on the custom-built swing I had chosen myself. Ethan's white shirt was unbuttoned several ways, and Chloe wore only a thin nightgown, soaking wet from the rain, clinging to her body and exposing her curves. They were kissing, a passionate, unrestrained kiss. Ethan's hands, the hands that held mine every day, were now roaming over the other woman's body. My heart felt crushed, shattering into 1,000 sharp fragments. 7 years of love, 7 years of sacrifice, 7 years of dedication, all dissolved into dust in one instant, becoming nothing more than a ridiculous joke. I thought I would scream, rush out, and slap them both. But no, a terrifying coldness surged from the depths of my soul, extinguishing all emotion. The pain didn't vanish. It solidified into a hard block of ice, paralyzing my nerves. No tears fell. My chest stopped aching. There was only emptiness and a cold resolve. I wouldn't let them see me break. I wouldn't give them the satisfaction of reveling in my pain. I retreated silently, step by careful step. My hands were no longer shaking. I calmly turned and descended the stairs, my steps surprisingly steady. I returned to the apartment and closed the door. The only sound in the static silence was the ticking of the wall clock. I walked directly to the heavy steel security door that led to the rooftop from inside the apartment. I recalled Ethan bragging that for absolute security, he installed a special lock that could only be opened from the inside. I pulled out my key ring, found the key engraved with a star, and turned it. Click. The rooftop door was locked tight. Now they could enjoy their private world for as long as they liked. But that wasn't enough. I went to the utility closet in the living room where the main circuit breaker was located. I looked at the carefully labeled switches. Living room, master suite, kitchen, and finally a larger red switch labeled master. Without hesitation, I flipped it down hard. Poof. The entire penthouse plunged into absolute darkness and silence. The faint city glow outside the window cast eerie shadows. I stood in the dark and listened. I could imagine their startled faces on the rooftop when the lights abruptly died, when they realized they were trapped, but I didn't care anymore. They deserved it. I walked into the master suite without turning on a flashlight. The darkness seemed my best companion now. I opened the wardrobe and pulled out the largest suitcase. I didn't pack my clothes. Instead, I opened a hidden drawer and retrieved my separate savings account book, the diamond jewelry my mother gave me as a wedding gift, my passport, and all personal identification. Next, I went to Ethan's desk and opened the mini safe whose code I knew my birthday. Inside were some foreign currency and all the property deeds and car titles. I took everything, leaving not a single piece of paper. These assets were already in my name, given to me by my parents before the marriage. Ethan had convinced me to keep them in his safe for security. Now I understood what that security meant. I put everything into a separate pouch and carefully stashed it in the suitcase. I took nothing he had ever bought for me. I wanted no connection to the trader's keepsakes. Finished. I wheeled the suitcase to the living room. I glanced at our wedding photo on the shelf. My happy smile in the picture looked fake and ridiculous. I picked up the frame, intending to smash it, but stopped. I gently turned it face down toward the wall. I wouldn't break anything, nor cause a scene. I would leave silently like a ghost, leaving him an empty, cold house and a mess he would have to clean up himself. I slung my purse over my shoulder and pulled the suitcase toward the door. Before leaving, I paused. I took the red lipstick from my bag and wrote a short sentence on the large mirror in the foyer. Enjoy the show. Then I opened the door, stepped out, and closed it softly behind me. My great escape had begun. The night and the rain outside seemed to welcome my freedom. I knew that from this moment on, the Mia of yesterday was dead. The low rumble of the suitcase wheels on the hallway tile was the only sound breaking the night silence. I entered the elevator, looking at my reflection in the polished steel. A woman with an icy face, her eyes devoid of any emotional ripple, completely different from the gentle smiling wife I saw every day. The initial shock was gone, leaving a terrifying serenity. Now my mind had no room for grief or tears, only cold calculations for the next step. Where would I go? Back to my parents' home? No, not yet. I wouldn't appear before them as a failure, a daughter who defied her father only to face a miserable end. I needed to reclaim everything that was mine and make those who trampled on me pay a heavy price. I decided on a 5-star hotel, discreet and luxurious, where I could hide and launch my plan. The taxi sped away through the pouring rain, leaving behind the luxury condo building that was once my sanctuary, my whole world. Now it was just an empty gilded cage holding 2 guilty people. Checking into the city's finest 5-star establishment, I requested a corner suite on the highest floor, offering a panoramic view of the Manhattan skyline at night. The room was spacious and opulent with exquisite furnishings and warm golden lighting, a world utterly contrary to the simple, secluded life I had willingly chosen for the past 7 years. I set down the suitcase and walked straight to the giant glass window, looking down at the city lights glittering like a galaxy. How long had it been since I experienced this feeling? The feeling of being myself, of living in the world that truly belonged to me. I opened the new cell phone I kept hidden in a secret compartment of my purse. A phone used only for contacts in my old world. I found a name, Caleb, assistant. Caleb was a bright, sharp young man, fiercely loyal, who had worked for me before I married. For 7 years, even while I was retired, I quietly kept him on payroll just in case a day like this arrived. The phone rang only once before he picked up. Caleb's voice was a mix of surprise and worry. "Mrs. Blackwood, Mia, you finally called. Are you all right?" His familiar voice was like a warm stream slightly melting the wall of ice around my heart. "I'm fine, Caleb," I replied, my voice a little husky. "I need you to handle a few things right now." "Yes, tell me." "Anything," Caleb answered without hesitation. "First, investigate Ethan Blackwood's personal finances over the last 6 months. All bank accounts, credit cards, loans, any unusual transactions. Second, find out everything about a woman named Chloe Vance currently living in apartment 55 Ampers in my building. I need her entire background, past relationships, marital status, everything. I want a detailed report on my desk by 9 a.m. tomorrow." "Understood, Mrs. Blackwood. I'll start immediately." Caleb responded professionally. He didn't ask why. He didn't question anything. That's what I trusted about Caleb. "And Caleb," I added, "tomorrow morning at 8 a.m., bring attorney Stephen Adler here. Tell him that Chairman Hayes's daughter needs to see him urgently." "Attorney Adler, the firm's senior partner?" Caleb sounded slightly surprised. "Yes," I confirmed. "Just tell him that he'll understand." Hanging up, I let out a long breath. The machine had started moving. Attorney Stephen Adler was the senior partner at my family's law firm, a seasoned market veteran who had navigated countless storms with my father. He wasn't just a lawyer. He was an uncle figure, a confidant I could absolutely rely on. Thinking of my father, a pang of remorse hit me. I remembered the day I decided to leave everything for Ethan. My father, a man always strict but who loved me unconditionally, looked at me with deep disappointment. He said, "Mia, I don't forbid your love, but love isn't everything. That boy, Ethan Blackwood, his eyes hold too much ambition. I fear he's marrying you for more than love. You're used to a life of luxury. Can you truly handle an ordinary life? I worry you'll suffer." I was young then, believing in romantic ideals. I argued with him saying, "I don't need the money, Dad. I only need his love. I will prove my choice is right." And I left. For 7 years, I was virtually cut off from my family, only calling my mother occasionally, lying that I was very happy. I was too proud to admit I was wrong. But now, Ethan's betrayal had shattered that pride. my father was right. He saw through Ethan from the start. A feeling of regret and guilt surged within me. I had caused my parents too much distress. But I told myself now wasn't the time for weakness. I had to be strong to reclaim everything, not just for myself, but for the family honor, to show my father that even if his daughter stumbled, she would know how to get back up even stronger than before. I didn't sleep that night. I sat by the window meticulously outlining every step of my revenge plan. A calculated, ruthless strategy with no retreat. They turned me into a fool. Now I would show them the catastrophic consequences when an intelligent fool gets angry. In this game, I wouldn't just be a player. I would dictate the rules. With the full backing of the world I had abandoned, I knew victory was already mine. While I sat in the luxurious hotel suite, charting the course of my war miles away on the cold rooftop, the tragic comedy of the two traitors was just beginning. I could picture the scene vividly, as if watching a slow-motion film. When the lights in the penthouse died and the soft jazz music from Ethan's Bluetooth speaker fell silent, they must have thought it was a simple building power outage. Oh, a blackout? Chloe likely purred, hugging Ethan tighter for comfort. Ethan, with the smugness of a seasoned man, probably laughed and reassured her. It's fine, babe. It'll be back on soon. It's more romantic here anyway, watching the city in the dark. They probably enjoyed a few more minutes of their guilty romance, oblivious that these were their final moments of peace. But 5 minutes, 10 minutes, half an hour passed, and the power remained off. The rain intensified, and the cold began to seep into their bones. Chloe's flimsy nightgown offered no protection against the biting chill. She started shivering and complaining. It's too cold, darling. Why is the power taking so long? Let's go downstairs. That was when Ethan must have realized something was wrong. He released Chloe and walked to the steel door leading inside. He pushed hard. The door wouldn't budge. He tried the handle. It was rigidly locked. Panic started to flicker across his face. It's locked, he must have exclaimed. How can it be locked? I swear I only pulled it shut on the way up. Chloe must have rushed over and together they pushed, pulled, and rattled the door. But all was futile. The heavy fortified door designed to keep out intruders had become an impenetrable wall, trapping the very people who deserved to be locked away. True terror engulfed them. The rain poured down. Lightning illuminated the sky, revealing their pale faces, chilled and terrified. What do we do now, Ethan? We're trapped up here. Chloe started to cry, her earlier seductive charm replaced by the image of a weak, pathetic woman. In his panic, Ethan must have screamed, "My name, Mia. Are you in there? Open the door, Mia." But his only reply was the sound of the falling rain and the terrifying silence from the apartment below. He started using all his strength to break the door, shouldering it, kicking it. But the door stood firm, mocking his helplessness. Exhausted and desperate, they could only huddle in a corner, holding each other for warmth. But that embrace could not dispel the coldness of guilt and rising fear. They were trapped there in the dark, in the storm for nearly 3 hours until a tiny glimmer of hope. Ethan remembered the emergency exit door leading to the building's main stairwell. He and Chloe scrambled towards it. Luckily, that door was not locked. Like drowning people clutching a life raft, they burst through and stumbled down the stairwell, soaked and shivering. When they reached the 55th floor, standing before our apartment door, Ethan fumbled with his key. The door opened, but inside the space was still cold and dark. He groped for the light switch and flipped it. Nothing happened. He suddenly realized it wasn't a building-wide outage, only his apartment had been disconnected. A terrible premonition shot down his spine. He rushed to the utility closet. The red master switch was in the off position. He flipped it back up. The living room lights flared on, illuminating a scene that made both Ethan and Chloe freeze. The usually warm, immaculate home was eerily empty and cold. The wedding photo on the shelf was turned face down toward the wall. And on the large mirror in the foyer, a message written in bright red lipstick stood out clearly. Enjoy the show. Mia. Where is Mia? Ethan screamed, charging into the master suite. The room was empty. The wardrobe was open, but only his clothes remained. My jewelry drawer was empty. The mini-safe was ajar. Not a single document left inside. Every trace of me seemed erased, except for the faint scent of lily still lingering in the air. She's gone. She knows everything. Ethan likely sank to the floor, clutching his wet hair. Panic, fear, and a hint of rage at being outmaneuvered. All emotions exploded within him. Chloe stood at the bedroom door, her face white as a sheet. What do we do now, Ethan? She knows everything. She won't let us get away with this. Her family. Shut up, Ethan yelled, cutting her off. He stood up, pacing like a trapped animal. No, this can't come out. He began to scheme. She's just angry, and ran off. She probably went to a friend's place. Yes, he reassured himself. Now he had to play the victim. He turned to Chloe, his eyes sharp and calculating. Listen carefully. From now on, you play the role of the worried good neighbor. And I'm the pathetic, heartbroken husband whose wife left without a word. We have to get ahead of her. We have to make everyone believe she is at fault. And so their second act began. Ethan picked up his phone and started calling my closest friends. His voice, strained with supposed anguish, spun a tale of my sudden emotional volatility, my unwarranted jealousy, and my disappearance. The perfect victim act was launched. But they didn't know that the only audience member who mattered me was watching calmly from afar, preparing an unstoppable counterstrike. The next morning, as the first rays of light pierced the luxurious suite, I was awakened by a knock at the door. Caleb and Attorney Adler had arrived right on schedule. I quickly put on a silk robe and opened the door. Caleb bowed slightly, carrying a large briefcase and a bag of hot breakfast. Behind him stood Attorney Adler, a sharp man in his late 50s with salt and pepper hair, whose eyes were keen and authoritative, radiating the aura of someone accustomed to complex legal battles. "Hello, Mia," he said warmly, his eyes conveying the concern of a mentor. Caleb briefly filled me in. "You've been through a lot." His presence and words were a calming antidote, strengthening my resolve. "Please come in," I said, leading them to the large sofa in the living area. While Caleb set out the breakfast, Attorney Adler wasted no time. He cut straight to the chase. "Tell me everything, Mia. The whole story. The more detail, the better." I took a deep breath and recounted the events of the past 7 years. My decision to leave home, the seemingly perfect marriage, Chloe's arrival, the suspicious signs, the night on the rooftop, and my escape. I narrated it calmly, without tears or self-pity. I simply presented the truth, raw and painful. Attorney Adler listened intently, nodding occasionally, his expression hardening. When I finished, he was silent for a long moment before tapping the table lightly. "That punk dared to deceive Chairman Hayes's daughter. He has some nerve." He turned to me, his voice resolute. "Don't worry, Mia. I will handle this. He and that woman will pay. But first," he continued, "we need to cut off his financial lifeline. A man as ambitious and dependent on money as him loses everything when he loses his cash." That was exactly my thinking. "What should I do, Stephen?" I asked. Attorney Adler took a sip of the tea. Caleb prepared. "The penthouse and the cars are in your name. Premarital assets he can't touch. The problem lies with the bank accounts and credit cards. If I recall correctly, you provided him with a secondary black card from your account at Sterling Private Bank. Unlimited limit, correct?" "Yes," I nodded. "It was my biggest mistake. An act of absolute trust. Blatantly exploited. First thing," Attorney Adler instructed, "call the bank's branch manager immediately. Demand they instantly lock all secondary cards under Ethan Blackwood's name. As the primary card holder and a VIP client, your request will be executed immediately. Then freeze the joint checking account." I followed his instructions, calling Mr. David, the manager I was friendly with. After my brief explanation, he asked no questions, simply stating, "I understand, Miss Hayes. Everything will be processed in 5 minutes. Sure enough, a few minutes later, I received bank notifications. Secondary card locked per your request. Joint account temporarily frozen. Meanwhile, Caleb opened his laptop and presented the information he gathered overnight. "Mrs. Blackwood, Mr. Adler, this is the preliminary report." He rotated the screen toward us. Over the past 6 months, Ethan Blackwood withdrew several large cash sums from the joint account for unexplained reasons, totaling nearly $500,000. Regarding the secondary black card, he spent over $1 million primarily on luxury items like designer bags, watches, jewelry, and 5-star retreats in Miami and Vegas. Coincidentally, these expenses often align with the days he told you he was away on business trips, Caleb continued. Regarding Chloe Vance, her past is complicated. She is not a single mother. She is still legally married. Her husband is an engineer working overseas. Young Leo is not her biological son, but her deceased sister's child whom she adopted. There are indications she has been involved in several romantic fraud schemes before, typically targeting wealthy men. Everything was becoming clear. A perfect charade had been staged to deceive me. My compassion was ruthlessly exploited. "Excellent, Caleb," Attorney Adler murmured. "Keep digging into her past. I believe there's more dirt to uncover." At that very moment, I could picture the scene unfolding elsewhere. Ethan likely took Chloe shopping to compensate for their disastrous night on the roof. He would confidently hand the black card to the sales associate only to receive a shaking head and the words, "Sir, your card has been declined." Surprise. Confusion. Turning to panic as he tried all his other cards with the same result. His financial nightmare had officially begun. My first counterstrike was silent, but hit him where it hurt the most. I knew that without money, the true nature of Ethan Blackwood, ambitious but incompetent, would quickly emerge, and the relationship built on greed between him and Chloe would swiftly fracture. I took a sip of coffee. Its bitterness was no longer unpleasant. It held a sweetness of triumph. The game had just begun, but I knew I had won the first round spectacularly. The following days passed in strange tranquility. I remained at the hotel coordinating with Caleb and attorney Adler to gather more evidence and outline the strategy for the legal battle ahead. I completely cut off all contact with Ethan. He was probably scrambling to cope with the financial chaos I had left behind. Knowing his nature, he wouldn't give up easily. He was definitely trying every channel to reach me, but my new phone was a world he couldn't touch. This silence was the most effective psychological torture, leaving him in limbo, terrified of my next move. Meanwhile, Caleb's team worked tirelessly. He mobilized top contacts, even hiring a professional private investigations firm to delve into every corner of Ethan's and Chloe's lives, and what they uncovered was more horrifying than I could have imagined. One afternoon, Caleb brought me a thick, neatly bound folder. "Mrs. Blackwood, this is the full report," he said, his face grave. "There are some details here I think you should prepare yourself for." A cold premonition stirred within me. I opened the folder. The first page showed Chloe Vance's complex relationship map, a dense spiderweb, but what froze me was a familiar name circled in red connected to Chloe by a bold line, Ethan Blackwood. And next to his name, it didn't say lover as I expected, but business partner. I frantically flipped the page. It was a photocopy of a cooperation contract between the two signed over a year ago, even before Chloe moved into my building. The contract's contents were explicit. Party B, Chloe Vance is responsible for approaching and establishing a romantic relationship with Mrs. Amelia Blackwood with the ultimate goal of causing Mrs. Amelia Blackwood to either initiate a divorce or create evidence of infidelity on her part to facilitate a divorce favorable to Party A, Ethan Blackwood. Upon success, Party B shall receive 10% of the total asset value awarded to Party A post-divorce. My entire body trembled. The paper in my hand felt heavy. I had to read it several times to believe my eyes. This was not a simple affair. This was a conspiracy, a trap meticulously laid out, complete with a legal contract and specific clauses. My husband, the man who slept next to me, had hired another woman to seduce him to create a staged infidelity, all to secure grounds for divorce and seize my assets. Disgust surged violently in my chest. He hadn't just betrayed me emotionally, he had actively plotted to ruin me, to make me out to be the guilty party, the cheating wife, so he could legally steal what was mine. 7 years of love, my sacrifice, all were merely a fat target in his eyes, an objective to be conquered. His malice and calculation exceeded every human boundary. I fought to maintain composure, flipping through the remaining pages. The report exposed another explosive truth. Ethan Blackwood was not the talented, self-made architect he always claimed to be. Most major projects he won over the past years were obtained through dirty tricks stolen from colleagues. The file detailed at least 3 cases where Ethan had plagiarized design ideas, bribed developers, and even fabricated evidence to destroy rivals. He built his career on lies and the suffering of others. The man I admired was merely a talentless, despicable parasite cloaked in a glamorous facade. The end of the folder contained details of Ethan's debts. He had heavily invested in volatile hedge funds and real estate, suffering catastrophic losses and owing a colossal sum to loan sharks and illegal lenders. This was the driving force, the motive that pushed him to execute this plan at any cost. He needed my money, a lot of it, to plug the bottomless hole he dug for himself. I closed the folder, my body drained of strength. The truth was too cruel, too devastating. I had loved and married a monster, a professional con artist. Every beautiful memory of him, of our marriage, now felt filthy and fake. Caleb stood nearby, his face etched with worry. "Are you all right, Mrs. Blackwood?" I shook my head, managing a faint smile. But the tears I had held back finally streamed down my face. But they weren't tears of weakness. They were tears of utter fury and hatred. "I'm fine," I said, wiping my tears, my voice turning icy. "I'm just planning a very special congratulatory gift for my husband's perfect scheme." They wanted to play a high-stakes game. I would play along, but this time I wouldn't just be a pawn. I would be the one to flip the board. The fire of revenge burned hotter than ever. I knew that with this evidence, I could not only leave Ethan penniless, but also send him to prison. But simple justice wasn't enough. I wanted him to experience being slowly destroyed. The sensation of being utterly powerless, just as he intended to do to me. The shock from the private investigator's report subsided, leaving me with a terrifying callousness and cold determination. I stopped crying. Tears are for the weak. Now only action mattered. Ethan built his entire career and public image on lies and polished PR. I would start right there. I would rip off his perfect mask and let the world see the true despicable face underneath, but I wouldn't do it loudly. A direct attack might alert him and potentially lead to legal trouble for defamation before I could deploy the decisive evidence. I would do it slowly, strategically, like a subtle poison, leaving him unable to fight back. I spent an entire evening researching the professional groups and forums Ethan frequented. He loved the spotlight, often posting articles, sharing his designs, and cultivating the image of a young, talented, and ethical architect. Crucially, he was the moderator of a major forum called the American Architects Guild, home to thousands of architects and engineers. This was the perfect stage for my performance. Using a new burner phone, I created a new Facebook profile and a forum account under an anonymous name, The Unveiled Truth. I crafted a persona, a passionate young architect, fresh out of school, deeply disillusioned with the industry's dark side. Then I began writing a long post, a story told from the perspective of an anonymous insider. I didn't name Ethan directly. I only used suggestive initials. A story untold about architect EB, rising star, or professional plagiarist. The title was sensational, designed to incite curiosity. In the article, I avoided outright accusations. Instead, I recounted a specific, detailed story, one of the 3 cases Caleb's team uncovered. It was the story of a young architect named Adam Long who poured his heart into a groundbreaking design for a high-end Seattle resort. But architect EB, his colleague and superior, used dirty tactics to steal the design, alter it slightly, and present it to the developer under his own name. Long, devastated, and powerless, resigned, and fell into depression. I wrote with deep empathy for the victim and scorching indignation for the villain. I went in highly specific details, facts only an insider would know, gathered from interviews with Ethan's former colleagues. I even subtly mentioned some of EB's unique identifiers. He frequently wore a limited edition PC Philippe watch and constantly spoke about sustainable green architecture principles, the exact image Ethan cultivated. To build credibility, I used a few dummy accounts posing as old colleagues to post corroborating comments. Oh my god, I know exactly who this is. Everyone in the firm knew about the Long case, but no one dared speak up. Or EB doesn't just steal designs. There's more to it. Can't wait for the next part. The post went live at 10:00 p.m. peak activity time for the forum. Just as I predicted, it immediately sparked a firestorm. Within hours, the post had thousands of views, hundreds of comments, and shares. The name EB quickly became the hottest topic. People began speculating with the distinctive clues I embedded. Ethan Blackwood's name was quickly shouted out. Some initially defended him, claiming it was a malicious rumor designed to sabotage his reputation. But then something unexpected happened. An account named Adam Long left a short, powerful comment. Everything the original poster wrote is true. Thank you for daring to speak out. It was Adam Long, the real victim. Perhaps after years of silence, he couldn't bear it anymore when his story was finally exposed. His comment was the deciding blow, crushing all doubt. The wave of condemnation directed at Ethan became a tsunami. I sat in the hotel suite, watching it all unfold on my laptop. I could imagine Ethan's face now, furious at the slander, terrified that his dirty past was being unearthed. He would be frantically trying to contact the forum administrator to delete the post, but he didn't know I had prepared for that. I had already forwarded the article to a few friends in architectural journalism. The next morning, several smaller online publications started running the story with even more sensational headlines. Major plagiarism scandal rocks young architect circles or exposed. Is the talented architect EB just a product of dirty PR? His own weapon was now being used against him. His professional reputation, the thing Ethan cherished most, was being destroyed by his own tactics. Clients and partners would undoubtedly start asking questions. My first attack was a direct hit, but it was just the appetizer. The main course was still ahead. I knew that backed into a corner, Ethan and Chloe wouldn't remain idle. They would surely retaliate, and I was waiting for it. Before the storm on the architectural forums could fully subside, another fiercer and more reckless erupted from a direction I hadn't fully anticipated. While Ethan was frantic, fighting the media crisis, trying to explain himself to partners and frantically scrubbing the damaging posts, Chloe Vance, his lover and accomplice, made an incredibly foolish move. Perhaps due to the financial cutoff and seeing Ethan teetering on the brink of ruin, her panic and greedy nature took over. She decided to act independently, seeking her own way out. Her target, my family. She didn't know the full truth of my lineage. In her eyes, I was just a rich girl who had estranged herself from her family. But from Ethan's rambling, she knew I had relatives in a more old money area, which Ethan, in his arrogance, had described as quaint, rural, and easily fooled. Chloe saw this as her last life raft. She tracked down the address of my parents' secondary residence, a grand French-style estate in Greenwich, Connecticut, where my father chose to retreat from the bustle of the city. Chloe, with her limited perspective, thought it was just a large country house belonging to a recently rich, unsophisticated family. She decided to go there and stage a confrontation, playing the role of the pitiable victim whose husband was stolen by my niece, hoping to extort a settlement. She prepared her act meticulously, dressing in worn, faded clothes, haggard and makeup-free. She even brought Leo, the young nephew she often used as a prop. One sunny morning, as my mother, Vice Chairwoman Eleanor Hayes, was tending to her prized orchid collection in the garden, Chloe appeared at the main gates. She didn't ring the bell, but began wailing and shouting loudly, attracting the attention of neighbors. "Oh, God. Neighbors, come see. The niece of this house stole my husband, ruined my family, and now she's hiding. Ma'am, are you home? Please come out and talk about right and wrong." My mother, Eleanor, was an astute and powerful woman. She wasn't just a typical housewife. She was the vice chairwoman of the Hayes Group, the woman who built the empire alongside my father. Hearing the racket, she merely frowned and signaled the groundskeeper to open the gate. Chloe, seeing the gate open, lit up, dragging a terrified Leo behind her. She stumbled into the garden and promptly collapsed to her knees before my mother, tears streaming. "Ma'am, please be my judge. Your niece, Mia Blackwood, stole my husband, the father of this child. Now she's run off, leaving my husband financially ruined, and we have nowhere to go. Please, I'm a woman, too. Have mercy on us. Tell her to give my husband back." My mother said nothing, silently watching the performance. Her eyes, sharp as knives, pierced through Chloe's charade. She calmly sat down on a stone bench in the garden and signaled a helper to bring her a hot cup of chamomile tea. "Stand up, please," my mother said, her voice neither warm nor cold, yet carrying an immense invisible weight. "We don't have a tradition of making our guests kneel." "You say Mia is my niece?" Yes, ma'am," Chloe quickly replied, thinking she was on the right track. She told me you were her country relatives. Is that so?" My mother took a slow sip of tea and placed the cup down delicately. "Then you must be mistaken. Mia is not my niece." Chloe froze, bewildered. "How can she not be? She is my daughter." My mother interrupted, her voice still steady, but every word hitting like a hammer. "Amelia Hayes is the only daughter of myself and Chairman Robert Hayes of the Hayes Group. And you? Who are you to come here and slander my daughter?" Chloe's entire body turned to stone. Her eyes widened, her mouth agape, unable to utter a word. The Hayes Group, chairman, only daughter. Those titles exploded like thunder in her ears. Who had she provoked? Seeing Chloe's stunned expression, my mother continued, her voice chilling several degrees. "You say my daughter stole your husband. Who is your husband? Where does he work? Where is your marriage certificate? May I see it?" My husband is Ethan Blackwood, the architect," Chloe stammered. "Oh, Ethan Blackwood," my mother scoffed, a look of profound scorn crossing her face. "The mediocre architect my daughter gave up a fortune to run away with. I know him well enough. And the marriage certificate? Do you have it? Or are you merely a mistress, a homewrecker who now dares to come here playing the victim?" My mother's words were invisible slaps across Chloe's face. Every prepared line of attack she had was rendered meaningless. Her pathetic drama had completely collapsed before an insurmountable opponent. Furthermore, my mother stood up approaching Chloe, her gaze ice cold. "Do you think I don't know who you are? Chloe Vance, 32, from rural Ohio. Current husband is an engineer working in Japan, not divorced. Previous conviction for felony fraud, currently on probation." "Correct." My mother rattled off her personal details. Information Caleb had uncovered and I had forwarded. Chloe was completely broken. She sank onto the ground, shaking uncontrollably, no longer daring to look my mother in the eye. "You conspired with that man, Blackwood, to cheat and destroy my daughter. Did you think we wouldn't know?" My mother said, her voice filled with authority. "I'll give you two choices. 1. Get off my property immediately and never appear before my daughter again. 2. I call the police. With your criminal record and the evidence we currently possess, how long do you think you'll spend in jail?" No further words were necessary. Chloe, like a cornered rat, scrambled up, dragging a terrified, weeping Leo, and bolted out the gate. She ran as if chased by a ghost, never daring to look back. Her pathetic performance ended in utter humiliation. My mother stood watching her retreating figure without a hint of pity. She pulled out her phone and called the head of the Hay Group security detail, ordering 2 extra guards stationed at the gate. From now on, no strangers are allowed near the house, especially a woman named Chloe Vance. My mother had entered the fight, and I knew that when she did, the enemy had only one path: annihilation. Chloe Vance's disastrous confrontation at my parents' home delivered a crucial blow to her unholy alliance with Ethan. Chloe, now fully aware of my powerful family, was completely broken and terrified. She dared not attempt any more schemes, choosing instead to hide, fearing the day the police would come knocking. Their relationship with Ethan fractured into bitter, explosive arguments. Chloe accused Ethan of lying to her, of pulling her into a fight too big, a war with a force they couldn't possibly win. Ethan blamed Chloe for her idiotic, rash actions that made everything worse. Their love, built on lies and calculation, shattered like soap bubbles when faced with true adversity. Meanwhile, Ethan Blackwood was truly cornered. The media storm on the architectural forums raged on. His professional credibility was severely damaged. Partners canceled contracts, projects stalled, and the financial lifeline for me was severed. The debts to loan sharks were due. Thugs with menacing faces started loitering near his office and the penthouse, demanding repayment. The pressure, professional, financial, emotional, and the sheer terror of facing my family's power, pushed Ethan to the brink of madness. He suffered from insomnia, lost significant weight, and his formerly suave, confident demeanor vanished, replaced by a haggard skeletal look, his eyes twitching with fear and sleep deprivation. In his desperation, with no other means to scrape together cash, Ethan committed the ultimate act of stupidity, an action that signed his own death warrant. He knew that one of the largest assets in my name was a prime piece of real estate in the Hamptons, gold mine land gifted by my father as a premarital asset, easily valued in the tens of millions of dollars. An insane idea took root. He would forge my signature to sell the land. He believed that with that money, he could pay off his massive debts, then disappear, start a new life somewhere else. He practiced my signature countless times. After 7 years of marriage, he was intimately familiar with my handwriting. He was confident he could create a perfect forgery no one would detect. He contacted a small private notary office with a sketchy reputation, whose notary he had previously bribed. He prepared a draft deed of transfer to a shell company he quickly set up. Everything was arranged covertly and quickly. One afternoon, Ethan went to that notary office to execute his felony. He had no idea that his every move was under our scrutiny. Attorney Adler, with the caution of a seasoned fox, had anticipated that Ethan might try to liquidate assets in my name. He had put people on continuous silent surveillance, particularly monitoring any transactions related to banking or real estate. Upon discovering Ethan's contact with the disreputable notary, he immediately installed high-tech covert surveillance devices inside the office. The entire process, Ethan's trembling hand forging my signature on the deed, the corrupt notary quickly stamping the document, was captured clearly, both video and audio. The video along with the forged deed was instantly transmitted to Attorney Adler. Holding the irrefutable evidence, I felt no exhilaration, only a sharp sadness. What terrifying things can a person do when blinded by greed and desperation? Ethan Blackwood had knowingly walked into a prison cell. His case was no longer a civil dispute over marriage and assets. It was now a serious federal felony of fraud, theft, and forgery of official documents. Attorney Adler called me, his voice betraying satisfaction. The fish took the bait, Mia. There is no escape now. What do we do next, Stephen? I asked. We won't call the authorities right away, he said, his voice measured. Let him believe his plan succeeded. Let him live a few more days in sweet delusion and false hope. We will unveil this ace card at the most opportune moment, the time that maximizes the impact. I have an idea for a truly grand finale. Taking his advice, I understood the endgame was near and the conclusion for Ethan would be not just failure, but total annihilation. I waited a cold, patient wait for the day the final sentence would be delivered to the man who betrayed me. After successfully pulling off the forged signature, Ethan seemed to regain a sliver of confidence. He believed he held the key to solving all his problems. He immediately took the fake deed to a bank, mortgaging the Hamptons' property for a colossal loan. He used the money to pay off the loan sharks, temporarily silencing their threats. He also began planning his new life, researching immigration to a country without an extradition treaty with the U.S. He spent his final days of freedom in a sweet delusion, completely unaware that an invisible net was tightening around him. Meanwhile, I left the hotel and returned to my parents' Connecticut estate. I decided it was time to face reality, time to reclaim my true identity. My return was no longer a retreat, but the homecoming of a victor. My father, after hearing the whole story and Attorney Adler's efforts, simply held me close. "You've truly grown up, my girl," he said, his voice filled with pride and pain. "I apologize for not protecting you sooner." "It's not your fault, Dad," I replied. "It was my naive, but I've learned my lesson now." My life entered a new chapter. I was no longer a housewife. I began working alongside my parents at the Hayes Group. The financial knowledge I learned in school, combined with the detailed organizational experience from 7 years of managing a complex household, proved incredibly valuable. I quickly adapted, offering sharp insights and earning the respect of the executive staff. I had found myself again the intelligent, decisive, and capable Mia Hayes. Then, Attorney Adler declared it was time for the final curtain call. "We need a stage," he said during a meeting with my parents and me. "A grand stage so everyone can witness his downfall. A courtroom trial is too dry and lacks the media impact we need. We need an event he cannot refuse." An idea sparked in my mind. "What about a charity gala?" I proposed. The Hayes Group holds its annual Metropolitan Charity Ball every year to raise funds for underprivileged youth. This year we can make it bigger. Invite the entire business community, all the major media outlets and key influencers. My father and Attorney Adler exchanged glances and nodded in approval. "Excellent idea." Attorney Adler said, "A charity ball, a high-profile humanitarian event, will be the perfect backdrop to expose the face of a man utterly devoid of humanity. He won't dare refuse the invitation. If he does, he'll exclude himself from high society and invite public criticism." The plan was swiftly set in motion. The Hayes Group announced the Wings of Hope Metropolitan Charity Ball, heavily advertised across all media. Every elite figure in New York society received an invitation, and of course, a specialist, prestigious invitation was sent directly to Ethan Blackwood. Upon receiving the invitation, Ethan was bewildered. He couldn't understand why I would invite him, but his ego and delusion clouded his judgment. He rationalized it as a sign of reconciliation that after all the turbulence, I realized I couldn't live without him and was offering him a chance to return. He also saw it as a golden opportunity to reappear in public, dispel the damaging rumors, and reclaim his image as a successful architect. He didn't hesitate, deciding to attend. He even convinced Chloe to come along. Chloe was initially terrified, but Ethan painted a bright picture for her. "Don't worry, she's softening. We'll put on a good show. I'll beg for her forgiveness. You act remorseful, too. In front of all those people, she won't dare cause a scene. This is our last chance to turn the tables." Chloe, drawn by the allure of glamour and superficiality, was convinced. She yearned for one night rubbing shoulders with the elite, standing next to Ethan as his partner. They had no idea that the invitation was not a peace offering, but a death warrant and invitation to their own professional and social funeral. The fateful banquet was set. The stage was built. The main actors and supporting cast were ready, waiting for the opening curtain of the most tragic play to be performed. I stood before the mirror, taking one final look. In my emerald green evening gown and sophisticated updo, I looked like a queen preparing for her final battle. And I knew that tonight I would undoubtedly be the victor. The Wings of Hope Metropolitan Charity Ball took place in the grand ballroom of the Waldorf Astoria. Crystal chandeliers sparkled, a symphony orchestra played softly, fine wines flowed, and guests in lavish attire created a scene of opulence and class. I, in my role as the family representative and event initiator, stood in the main reception line with my parents, greeting guests. Each attendee shook my hand, offering compliments on my impressive return to public life and the meaningful charity work. I merely smiled a calm smile that concealed a profound anticipation. My eyes occasionally scanned the door, searching for the two main characters of the evening, and then they arrived. Ethan Blackwood and Chloe Vance entered the hall, drawing considerable attention. Ethan wore a designer tuxedo, desperately trying to appear confident and distinguished. Chloe, in an overly revealing evening dress and heavy makeup, tried to project high society sophistication, but looked awkward and out of place among the truly established ladies. They walked up to me. Ethan put on a remorseful smile, his voice dropping dramatically. "Mia, thank you for inviting me." I didn't let him finish. I offered my hand, a cold, polite gesture. "Hello, Ethan. Miss Vance, thank you for supporting the cause." My distant attitude visibly shocked Ethan while Chloe shot me a jealous glare. My parents, standing beside me, offered them a curt nod before turning to greet other guests. They were openly dismissed, treated as mere ordinary attendees. The event proceeded with entertainment and a lively charity auction. Ethan and Chloe sat at a secluded table in a corner, yet their every move was monitored by me. I saw Ethan constantly looking my way, his eyes filled with anticipation. He was still deluded, believing I would call him to the stage, give him a chance to apologize, and stage a reconciliation, but he was wrong. When the most crucial part of the evening arrived, I, as the event host, stepped onto the stage. The spotlights illuminated me, every eye in the ballroom turned toward me. Distinguished guests, I began, my steady voice amplified by the microphone. On behalf of the Hayes Group and the Wings of Hope Foundation, I sincerely thank you for your presence tonight. Your support is immense encouragement for us to provide more homes, meals, and educational opportunities for underprivileged children. I paused, scanning the audience. My gaze stopped at Ethan Blackwood's table. He was looking at me, his face filled with hope. I smiled a cryptic smile. Ladies and gentlemen, stories of kindness and sharing are always profoundly inspiring. But life also contains stories of deceit and betrayal. Such tales, though painful, are invaluable lessons, helping us cherish genuine values. Tonight, I want to share one such story, a story about my own life. The entire ballroom murmured with confusion. No one understood what I was about to do. Ethan and Chloe looked stunned. A chilling premonition fell over them. I signaled the tech crew. The giant LED screen behind me lit up. Instead of the images of children that everyone expected, the screen displayed a romantic image of a couple on a rooftop during a storm. It was Ethan Blackwood and Chloe Vance. The audience gasped in astonishment. Ethan and Chloe went white, jumping up from their chairs. The video continued silently with text subtitles narrating the story of a wife who sacrificed everything for her husband only to be betrayed by him and the neighbor she helped. The scene shifted. The screen displayed the cooperation contract between Ethan and Chloe. The repulsive clauses magnified. Following this were various bank statements proving Ethan had funneled his wife's money to his lover and used it to pay gambling debts. Then came the documents exposing Ethan's long-standing plagiarism against his colleagues. Everything was presented clearly, logically, like an undeniable legal indictment. The audience's surprise shifted to outrage. Whispers of condemnation grew louder. My God, I can't believe it. What a piece of trash. That poor woman. She looked so helpless, but she's so manipulative. But that wasn't all. The screen transitioned to the final scene. Crystal clear footage from the hidden camera at the notary office. The image of Ethan Blackwood trembling as he forged my signature on the land transfer deed. This was the killing blow. And here, ladies and gentlemen, my voice rang out cold and sharp, overcoming the din, is the moment my beloved husband committed felony fraud, forging his wife's signature to steal the last of her inheritance. An act that is not only morally reprehensible but a severe criminal violation. The video ended leaving a deadly silence in the ballroom. All eyes, hundreds of pairs focused on Ethan and Chloe. Eyes filled with scorn, disgust, and disbelief. The most spectacular curtain call had taken place, not through tears or weakness, but through truth. A naked, undeniable truth. Their play was over and the ending couldn't be more humiliating. The moment the LED screen went dark, returning light to the ballroom, everything erupted. The initial silence was quickly replaced by a furious wave of indignation. Whispers and merciless condemnations were aimed directly at Ethan and Chloe. They stood at the center of the hall like two criminals being judged by a court of public opinion. Ethan's face was ashen. His whole body shook uncontrollably. Sweat beaded on his forehead. He stammered, trying to say something in his defense, but no sound could escape his choked throat. Chloe was completely broken. She sank to the floor, covering her face and sobbing hysterically wretched, mournful tears that evoked zero sympathy from the onlookers. I stood on the stage, calmly observing the tragedy I had orchestrated. I felt no exhilaration, only a chilling emptiness. This was the fate they deserved. Mr. Blackwood, I cannot believe you are this kind of man. A prominent elderly developer, a major partner of Ethan's, stood up, pointing a finger at him, his voice laced with anger and disappointment. Our contract for the new resort project is hereby terminated. Our firm will never cooperate with an unethical man like you. His declaration was the opening shot. Immediately, other partners rose one by one, announcing they were severing all business ties with Ethan. Our company, too. The project is halted. We will find another firm. We are considering litigation for damages. The career Ethan built on lies and manipulation collapsed like a sand castle before a tidal wave, all within a few minutes. But that was not the worst of it. Just as the chaos peaked, the ballroom's main doors swung open. Two uniformed NYPD detectives, their faces grim, stepped in. Behind them followed Attorney Adler. Everyone was stunned. A detective walked straight onto the stage, took the microphone from my hand, and demanded silence. His voice was loud and authoritative. We are from the NYPD Economic Crimes Division. We are here tonight to execute an arrest warrant for Mr. Ethan Blackwood on charges of felony fraud, theft, and forgery of corporate documents. The arrest warrant was read out clearly and sternly. The ballroom again fell silent, but this time it was the silence of shock. The two detectives descended and headed straight for Ethan. He stood frozen, his eyes vacant, offering no resistance. When the cold handcuffs snapped onto his wrists, he seemed to wake up. He turned to look at me, his eyes no longer holding remorse or pleas, but profound desperate hatred. The hatred of a cornered animal. "Mia, you ruined my life. I will never forgive you," he screamed, thrashing wildly, but it was too late. He was swiftly escorted away by the detectives, leaving behind Chloe's wailing and hundreds of contemptuous stares. Chloe, seeing her lover arrested, went hysterical. She crawled to my feet, clinging to the hem of my gown, sobbing and begging. "Mia, I was wrong. I know I was wrong. Please forgive me this once. I only did it because Ethan persuaded me. He tricked me. Please tell the police to let me go. I have my son to care for." I looked down at her, the woman who had once feigned misery to exploit my kindness, now staging another drama, a performance of belated remorse. I gently pulled my gown from her grasp, my voice devoid of emotion. "You should save those words for your lawyer. They will serve you better there." Then I turned to one of the detectives still standing nearby. "Sir, she is an accomplice in this fraud. We have a signed contract. I suggest you take her in for questioning as well." The detective nodded. Hearing this, Chloe fainted on the spot. The show was truly over. The two main characters, one cuffed, the other unconscious, received an unequivocally tragic end before the eyes of the entire high society. Their collapse was not merely a loss of honor and career. It was the complete destruction of their lives. The Metropolitan Charity Ball had become a night of judgment, and justice, though delayed, was executed with drama and finality. The chaos that followed Ethan and Chloe's removal gradually subsided, but the aftershock lingered in the ballroom. The banquet couldn't continue. The stunned guests, having witnessed such a shocking drama, gradually departed, taking with them a story they would discuss for a long time. My parents and Attorney Adler joined me. My father said nothing, only placing a hand on my shoulder, a gesture filled with both pride and solace. My mother hugged me tightly, her voice choked. "It's over, my darling. You did so well." I nodded, feeling an immense relief. The nightmare was finally past. But one question, one final mystery remained. I turned to Attorney Adler. "Stephen, the final video, the one showing him forging my signature. How did we get such clear footage? I didn't think placing a camera in a notary office was possible." Attorney Adler smiled, a cryptic look in his eyes. "We couldn't do it on our own, but there was one person who could." He signaled to Caleb, who led a strange man toward me. He looked about 40, his face somewhat worn, but his eyes firm. He was plainly dressed, looking nothing like the wealthy guests at the party. "Mia," Attorney Adler said. "This is James Thorne, an old acquaintance of mine." "Hello, Miss Hayes." James nodded slightly, his voice reserved. I was the one who provided that video footage." I was astonished. "But why? Why did you help me?" James sighed, then began a story that left me speechless. "I wasn't helping you. I was helping myself. I am Chloe Vance's legal husband." My parents and I were stunned into silence. Chloe's husband, the man she claimed to be divorced from, the man she used as an excuse to build the image of a pitiful single mother. How can this be?" I stammered. "We were never divorced," James said, his voice bitter. "I was working overseas, sending money home for her and my nephew Leo. I had no idea she was using that money to flaunt herself and deceive other men. I've known about her and Ethan Blackwood for a long time. I hired my own surveillance to gather evidence for divorce and custody of Leo, my sister's child. I apologize. I should have warned you sooner, but I was afraid if I showed myself, she would get cautious and gathering evidence would be impossible. I never thought their plot would go this far." It was clear now. In this war, I was not alone. I had a silent ally fighting for his own justice. "And the notary?" I asked. "He's my cousin," James replied. "He's weak and greedy and was bribed by Blackwood. When I learned of Ethan's final plot through him, I used family leverage to persuade him to cooperate. I promised him a greater sum and more importantly protection from an accomplice charge if he helped record the entire incident. He agreed. All the final knots were untied. Ethan's supposedly perfect scheme was riddled with fatal flaws. He was too arrogant, too dismissive of the people around him, only to be betrayed by the very people he thought he controlled. James's revelation not only answered my final question, but added a new layer of meaning to the story. This was not just my personal revenge. It was the combined force of all the victims, the deceived, standing up against evil. "Thank you, James," I said, a heartfelt thanks from the bottom of my soul. "You helped me immensely." "It's nothing, Miss Hayes." James shook his head. "I thank you, too. Because of you, I have the evidence I need to win custody of my nephew and expose that woman for who she truly is." This unexpected encounter brought me a sense of peace. In a world full of deceit and calculation, there were still good people willing to stand for what was right. I knew that with the collapse of Ethan and Chloe, not only I, but James and young Leo would also find a new peaceful beginning. The story wasn't over. As I spoke with James, another well-dressed man approached from the edge of the crowd. He walked up to me and bowed. "Excuse me, Miss Hayes. I am Adam Long. I was the victim of Ethan Blackwood's design plagiarism years ago." "You are Adam Long," I said, surprised. He was the figure in the anonymous expose I wrote. "I read your post on the forum," Long said, his voice full of regret. "I'm sorry I stayed silent for so long. Seeing everything tonight, I can't be quiet anymore. I and a few other former colleagues have decided to come forward as witnesses, offering additional evidence of Ethan Blackwood's misconduct to the authorities." The appearance of Long and the other colleagues was the final nail in the coffin of Ethan's career. The strangers, the silent victims, finally found the courage to speak up. This night wasn't just about justice. It was about the truth being restored. After the fateful gala, my life slowly returned to its orbit, but it was an entirely new trajectory. The media firestorm exploded. My name and my story were everywhere. But this time, it wasn't rumors or criticism. It was admiration and respect for a woman who bravely fought for justice. The Hayes Group's reputation was significantly boosted by our decisive and ethical action. I spent the following 3 months working closely with Attorney Adler and the authorities, providing necessary statements and evidence to finalize the case. Everything proceeded smoothly and swiftly. The trial for Ethan Blackwood and Chloe Vance was held 3 months later. I didn't attend. I had no desire to see their faces again. I followed the results only through Attorney Adler's reports. With irrefutable evidence from the conspiracy contract, the embezzlement documents to the felony charge of signature forgery, Ethan Blackwood received a fitting sentence. He was convicted of 12 years for felony fraud and 3 years for forgery, totaling 15 years in federal prison, a catastrophic price for his greed and malice. His career, reputation, and future were sealed behind bars. Chloe Vance as an accomplice was sentenced to 5 years. Her life, a long string of lies and deceit, finally faced justice. Young Leo, the innocent child in this saga, was taken in by James, who raised him with the genuine love of a guardian. My divorce from Ethan was finalized quickly. The court declared our marriage void due to elements of fraud from the outset. All assets in my name before the marriage were retained. All debts Ethan incurred he would bear alone. I was completely free from that man emotionally and legally. With everything settled, I decided not to return to my former life of leisure. The shock of the marriage had tempered me into a different woman, stronger, more capable. I recognized the value of independence, of controlling my own destiny. I officially returned to the corporate world, not as the chairman's daughter, but on the strength of my own merit. My father, witnessing my maturity, gave me a massive challenge. He put me in charge of a high-end real estate project in Miami that was struggling, a potentially groundbreaking development stalled by design and management issues. "I trust you, Mia," he told me. "Prove to everyone that the daughter of Robert Hayes is not just a trophy wife." I accepted the challenge with fierce determination. I immersed myself in the work, analyzing files, studying the market, meeting partners. I applied my financial acumen to restructure the project, cutting unnecessary costs. I also used my aesthetic sense and meticulousness to introduce new design concepts, transforming bland units into luxurious, emotion-filled living spaces. Those months were incredibly demanding, but I had never felt so energized and passionate. I found my calling again, reclaiming my self-worth. Gradually, the project showed clear progress. Partners regained trust. Investors poured money back in. The project, once a liability, was revived and promised to become a new city landmark. My success came not only from my own efforts, but also from the help of good friends. Caleb remained my indispensable assistant, supporting me constantly. Attorney Adler became my trusted legal advisor. Even James, after stabilizing his life, and Leo's occasionally called to check in and share valuable insights. Our relationship evolved from gratitude into a genuine friendship. The cost of betrayal was immense, but it also taught me an invaluable lesson. It showed me who my true allies were and helped me appreciate genuine relationships. It also helped me find myself again, a better, stronger, and more deserving version of myself. The war was over, but a new chapter, a new life had truly just begun. 1 year after that fateful night, it was a beautiful late afternoon in Miami. The golden sun poured down, painting the palm-lined avenues of the new luxury development. I drove my white convertible through the city, feeling the cool breeze on my hair, smiling gently at my reflection in the rearview mirror. The woman in the mirror, with her stylish short haircut, eyes sparkling with confidence, and a serene smile seemed a total stranger compared to the meek, compliant housewife of a year ago. The nightmare was over, and I hadn't just survived. I had truly been reborn from the ashes of betrayal. I was no longer the Mia of yesterday, a woman trapped by pain and hatred. I was now free, self-reliant, and savoring every precious moment of life. The real estate project I took over had succeeded spectacularly. Initially, when my father handed me the failing project, many on the board were skeptical. They viewed me as an untested Aries, a woman who only knew clothes and tea parties. But I didn't let those prejudices deter me. I threw myself into the work. I used the same detailed planning and meticulousness I honed during my 7 years as a homemaker to manage the complex development. I realized running a huge project was similar to nurturing a home. Both required dedication, insight, and the ability to spot the smallest issues. I personally visited every construction site, put on a hard hat, and spoke with every worker. I sat down with the team of architects, not as a boss giving orders, but as a colleague, helping them unleash their creativity. I transformed soulless concrete blocks into sophisticated, emotionally resonant living spaces. The luxury complex, which I named the Phoenix Ascendant, a symbol of my own destiny, became one of the most successful and sought-after real estate projects on the market. It not only brought enormous profits to the Hayes Group, but also won prestigious architectural and design awards. On the day of the project's inauguration, my father stepped onto the stage. He didn't speak much about the business numbers. He just looked at me, his eyes brimming with pride, and said one sentence I will never forget. Before I was proud to build the Hayes Group, but today my greatest pride is my daughter, Amelia Hayes. In that moment, I cried. Tears of happiness and recognition washed away all the pain and humiliation of the past. I had proven my capability not just to my father or the public, but most importantly to myself. I was no longer living in the shadow of my family. I had forged my own path, creating my own light. Today, I had a special appointment. I stopped my car in front of a quiet courtyard cafe tucked away in a small alley, a familiar spot over the past year. From a distance, I saw a familiar silhouette waiting at a wooden table beneath a canopy of bright bougainvillea. James saw me, smiled warmly, and waved. Next to him sat young Leo. The boy looked bigger, healthier, and much more outgoing. "Aunt Mia," Leo shouted happily, abandoning his sweet pastry and running to hug me. I crouched down and embraced him, feeling the warmth and innocence of the child's soul, which filled me with a rare sense of peace. "Leo, have you been good listening to Uncle James?" I ruffled his hair. "Yes, ma'am. I got Star of the Week all week," the boy proudly announced, his eyes sparkling. "Uncle James promised to take me to the zoo to see the elephants this weekend." My relationship with James had grown closer over the past year. After everything ended, he used all his savings and the generous funds attorney Adler had provided on my behalf to open a small, reputable private investigation firm. With his integrity, his business quickly thrived. He was no longer the haggard man weighed down by bitterness. He had found joy and purpose in his life next to his beloved nephew. We didn't rush things. We came together slowly, quietly, like two kindred spirits who had weathered the same storm, finding shared understanding, empathy, and a safe harbor in each other. We sat together, sipping coffee, talking about my projects, about the interesting cases James' firm had cracked, and about Leo's first school crush. Sometimes we fell silent, just smiling at each other, a tranquility that both James and I hadn't felt in a very long time. Over the past year, I gradually learned of the fate of the others. Ethan Blackwood remained in prison, paying for his crimes. He occasionally wrote me long, rambling letters full of belated remorse and complaints about the harshness of prison life. He begged for my forgiveness, pleading for a second chance when he was released. I read the first letter, feeling no emotion, only pity for a life that self-destructed. I didn't reply. The subsequent letters I didn't even open, simply giving them to Caleb to handle. The past was past. I wouldn't let anything contaminate my present peace. As for Chloe Vance, after serving her time, word was she quietly left the city. No one knew where she went. Her life, a long chain of deceit, ended in isolation and obscurity. They had become part of history, an expensive lesson life had taught me. I no longer hated them. I had forgiven them, not because they deserved it, but because I deserved peace. "Mia." James suddenly took my hand, his voice hesitant, but earnest. "I know you've been through so much pain. I have, too. We are both people who stumbled, who lost faith. But for the past year, being by your side and seeing your strength, your renewal, I've started to believe in new beginnings again." He squeezed my hand, looking deeply into my eyes. Eyes that held respect and deep affection. Can Leo and I become a part of your future? I can't promise you the material wealth you once had, but I promise to spend the rest of my life giving you peace, respect, and a genuine love." I looked at him into those eyes where there was no deceit or calculation, only warmth and sincerity. I didn't answer right away, just felt the warmth of his hand spreading through me. Tears welled up, but this time they were tears of happiness and profound emotion. The painful past had forged the woman I was today. No longer naive, no longer believing in rosy promises, but also unwilling to lose faith in genuine love, a love built on understanding and shared experience. I nodded gently, a gesture that spoke volumes. James smiled, a radiant smile that erased all the worry from his face. Leo, chasing a butterfly in the garden, suddenly turned and saw us holding hands. He ran over and clambered onto my lap. "Aunt Mia, Uncle James, what game are you playing? Can I play too?" James and I looked at each other and laughed. I held Leo tightly. James put his arms around both of us. 3 people, 3 shattered lives, had now found a family, a complete home in each other. The sun set, painting the sky with a brilliant orange hue. From the ashes of betrayal, I had truly been reborn, vibrant and powerful as a phoenix. Life had taken away a fraudulent husband, but returned to me a sky full of freedom and genuine happiness. And I knew this was not an end, but the beginning of a new chapter, a chapter filled with joy and light in my life. A journey I would no longer have to walk alone. Dear listeners, the turbulent journey of Amelia Hayes has come to an ending that perhaps satisfies us all. Witnessing the traitors like Ethan Blackwood and Chloe Vance pay the price for their crimes, we must feel a sense of satisfaction when justice is served. But beneath the collapse of those dark schemes, this story leaves us with far deeper and more resonant lessons about life, love, and self-worth. The first and perhaps largest lesson is never to lose yourself in any relationship. Looking back at the first 7 years of the marriage, we see Amia willing to abandon everything, a promising career, family backing, and most importantly, her own identity to become the perfect wife in her husband's eyes. She willingly entered a gilded cage, happy to be the silent supporter, the quiet sacrifice. Sacrifice in love is admirable, but sacrificing oneself to the point of forgetting one's own values and dreams is profoundly dangerous. It unconsciously creates an imbalance, making our giving seem like an entitlement to the other person. And when our value is no longer appreciated, that very sacrifice becomes the chain that binds our lives. The final straw on the rooftop, though bitter and cruel, was the necessary awakening. It forced Mia to look inward to realize that the world she thought was heaven was merely a stage built on lies. And from that moment, we gained the second crucial lesson, the power of independence and the courage to face the truth. Mia did not collapse or drown in tears. She transformed her pain into strategy. The lesson here isn't to encourage vengeance, but to emphasize the importance of controlling one's own life. Financial independence, having a safety net of family and trusted allies, and above all, inner strength became the sharpest weapons enabling her victory. The story shows us that when pushed to the limit, women are far from weak. They can become more resilient and decisive than anyone, provided they dare to believe in themselves. Finally, the most profound humanitarian lesson is perhaps about forgiveness and liberation. Many might call this a sweet revenge, but looking deeper, Mia's ultimate goal was not the destruction of Ethan, but finding justice and freedom for herself. True victory is not when the enemy falls in disgrace, but when we reclaim our smile and inner peace. Revenge can bring momentary satisfaction, but hatred will forever remain an invisible cord tying us to a painful past. Mia chose to use the law to resolve the matter, ensuring clarity and transparency. And when all scores were settled, she chose to move forward, build a new life, and find genuine happiness. She didn't let the ghost of the past haunt her. That is the greatest victory of all, the triumph over self, the freedom from the chains of hatred. Chronicles of the Unveiled believes that somewhere out there are women, people enduring injustice, silently sacrificing in toxic relationships. If you feel disrespected, giving too much without recognition, remember that you are not alone and you always have the right to choose. Learn to love yourself first. Build your independence and have the courage to speak up when necessary. You deserve to be loved, respected, and to live a happy life on your own terms. What is your story? Have you ever had to stand up and fight for yourself? Share your thoughts and stories in the comments below. Every share is not just empathy, but motivation for countless others who need it. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications to join Chronicles of the Unveiled in listening to and reflecting on more meaningful life stories. Disclaimer: all characters and incidents in the preceding story are fictional, created for educational purposes, and to convey humanistic messages about life. The story is not intended to attack or imply any specific individual or organization.